This weekend, all across the internet, there was a huge debate that began to rage around the idea of difficulty in video games. At what point do we consider an adventure too hard to beat? And should we actually require the developers put in more easy mode options? This is actually a real topic that people are really digging into, and I find it very, very fascinating as somebody who's managed to beat thousands of different games. Where exactly do we draw the line, and do these people actually have a point? What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and what really kicked this debate off is a series of articles randomly appeared late on Friday that started talking about the idea of Sekiro Shadows Dying Twice being way too difficult. It seems like certain journalists find the entire experience to be impassable. Certain bosses are just a wall that they cannot even hope to get past. Now, I find this fascinating because I think that FromSoftware games are a very, very different kind of experience. I've managed to beat all of them, and I will say that everything from Sekiro to Demon's Souls and of course the absolutely epic Dark Souls trilogy, these are games that pride themselves on being some of the hardest things around. Now, I do know that there's some fans out there who like to pretend that if you play this stuff enough, it's not hard, but I actually think that the point of FromSoftware is making difficult experiences. But on this topic, we do have to acknowledge the fact that video games are kind of entering a very peculiar space, because they are art, but they're art that some people cannot access. Now, let me just make a giant analogy real quick, which is, let's think about other art forms. Anybody can go to a museum and just look at some really artsy paintings, even if they don't fully understand it. You can also put any sort of CD into your CD player and listen to a song, and even if it's not in a language you speak, or even if you don't understand music like I do, you're still able to hear it and digest it, at least on some level. Or even something like a really artsy movie. Now, this is one I love, and you could buy this on Amazon right now and put it into your DVD player, but you might not really get it. You might not get any enjoyment out of it, and certainly you might not understand why there's such a weird movie that even exists. But with a little bit of consumption, with a little bit of research, any of these can be fully grasped. Video games, though, that's not exactly the case. The longer I live and the more years I do YouTube, the more I get chances to actually talk to people on a wider chunk of the spectrum of gamer, from people from casual to ultra hardcore, and something I find fascinating is that there are a lot of people out there who simply cannot beat particular games or genres. Like, something I find interesting is there are a lot of people out there who cannot play horror games. They are unable to even pick up the controller since they're so easily startled, which makes it where I absolutely love Evil Within 2. It's probably one of my favorite modern horror games because it is so freaking frightening. But there's actually tons of different hidden secrets in that game that you won't just stumble upon in a YouTube video. You actually need to pick up the controller and experience those frights for yourself in order to actually get it. And a lot of people won't. It's one of those things where you truly need to put on the shoes, pick up the flashlight, and figure it out on your own, or else you just don't grasp it. I feel like the same thing goes for Dark Souls. I mean, Dark Souls is something that's cool, but honestly, the reason it is cool, in my opinion, is because you're getting to get lost and have to explore these really grubby little dungeons and figuring out how to conquer a boss. The enjoyment comes from figuring these puzzles out. 100% of the joy is actually distilled from the fact of your struggle. It's not something you can just drop into and consume. It is not a passive experience. The joy of Dark Souls is greatly contained within the journey of leveling up and figuring things out on your own. Now, the reason I think it's so important to point this out, even though it seems rather obvious, is because I do think that there are people out there who want to go on these journeys. There is a huge chunk of people out there who did not grow up playing video games. There are people who perhaps as an adult decided to buy a Nintendo Switch as their first console ever, and now are beating Mario Odyssey and Mario Kart, and now they've just decided to buy something like Dark Souls and give it a shot for the first time, and they can't get anywhere in it. They're unable to even get out of the opening prison. Well, what do? Well, I guess that's kind of the question I myself am a little bit struggling with. I wish that there was a way for these people to see these things and honestly to get a chance to enjoy the roller coaster that we all have. I guess I'll say I'm not fully opposed to the idea of difficulty modes being implanted in every games. But here is my giant caveat to that. My only worry is that I feel like difficult games are cool a lot of times because you can see the developer's vision instilled in it. So like just as a random example, this is Gungnir, and let me tell you, Gungnir is tough. You've very likely never heard of this, but it is a turn-based RPG that is brutal. Within this game, there's actually tons of different characters that all level up individually. You need to worry about improving your weapons, and it's basically a turn-based strategy game like Final Fantasy Tactics, but is about 1,000,000 times harder. And so because of it, most people will never get a chance to enjoy its art, or its visuals, or its really, really complex storyline, because there is no easy mode in this. There is no way to actually get anywhere in this game if you are not a master-level RPG player. But what if they had put an easy mode in it? Honestly, I think that would actually take away from the developer's time. So here's my thing. I think what I'm actually in favor of, and this might be controversial to say, is I like the idea of easy mode DLC. Now what I mean by that is, think about the fact that right now Sekiro is out there and people are eating it up. I mean, it is so much of a blast right now to get on Twitter and see people struggling to conquer bosses and finding that next prosthetic arm upgrade and really getting good with the grapple hook. That is the reward for their journey. But what happens in 6 months or in 1 year? Most of you will have moved on. Most of you will have forgotten about the idea of Sekiro and started to focus on that next grand experience. But there are some people who are going to be picking it up for the first time. What happens if they're not able to beat it? Well, I actually kind of like the idea of developers possibly, if they want to, after the game is done, creating some sort of additional modes. Now the reason I say this specifically is that way it doesn't take away from development time. Creating additional difficulties and actually being able to tinker with things like enemy strength requires a massive amount of work. This is not just a little volume dial you turn up or down. Being able to finely tune how enemies attack and how combat flows is a masterwork thing that takes an incredible, arduous amount of work from every single person on the team, which is why I want video games to launch as they currently are, be out there on store shelves, let people crash against them, let people have a bunch of fun, and then later on, if the developers want, they go on later and create additional options. Now, I guess I just mostly said it because I've seen so many people who absolutely love the idea of Dark Souls, but they can't get anywhere in it. Or I see people who are actually playing Final Fantasy VII for the first time as their first turn-based RPG ever, and they love the fact that there is the cheat codes in it. I've seen people say that they're playing the game and grinding at triple speed because it doesn't consume time the way it once did. These shortcuts end up making it where it enables a giant audience. More people are able to access this, and also, let's face it, the developers win because now more players are going to be picking it up. More people means more sales, which means, of course, a bigger fan base for eventual sequels. I guess what I'm saying is that I think that everything should stay the way it is at launch. If you want to make a game that's impossibly hard, do it. If you want to make a horror game that has a 15-minute scene where they're basically skinning somebody's hand with a potato peeler, you can do that. But if later on you want to make a mode that actually just curbs that stuff out, maybe call it the less horror mode, I guess I have no problem with that. My thing is, I want gaming to be seen by everybody that wants to get it, but I also just want to make sure everybody gets their own journey out of it. I'm somebody who is absolutely obsessed with Diablo, specifically Diablo 3, and Diablo has this really interesting mechanic in it where you can actually turn the difficulty up and down whenever you want, and the higher you turn it, the greater your rewards you're given. You'll actually get more experience points, better loot, and more money. So it makes it where if you're able to play on the hardest of the hardest of the hardest difficulties, you can become an absolute god. But somebody that's playing it on normal difficulty will actually still get a chance to see the great art and the cool cutscenes and the absolutely sweet outfits. They're not exactly getting less, it's that the hardcore players are just getting more. And that seems like the absolute best way to win. But this is just my personal thoughts as somebody who's managed to beat a lot of these games, but wants them to be even more accessible, at least in a certain light. But what do you think about that? Does that seem like it's too far, or does it seem like I'm somebody who's just a wimpy reviewer who likes playing games with multiple different styles? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Look, my thing is, if you end up making an ultra easy mode, call it something like the tour guide, or maybe the journalist mode. Make it where all the enemies have big, beautiful flowers in their hair, or the side of the screen has a big pink border. Something so you know that you're not getting the ultra hardcore experience, but they're still getting a experience. That's just my point of view. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.